Knowledge on the Go series. We launched this series to discuss trends that are transforming business globally. For now, the series will be presented as a webinar format, but going forward, when the lockdown is lifted, it will acquire a physical form also. This series is in addition to the one that we started in April, which is Thursday Talks, which is examining the impact of COVID-19 on different sectors of the Canadian economy. Today's webinar is something that has to do with the ethnic media. We have called it the rise and relevance of Canada's ethnic media. We have an expert panel to discuss this fascinating subject. Let me briefly introduce you to all of them. We have Sudhir Anand, Bobby Sahni, and Hari Srinivas. Now, let me briefly talk about each of them. Sudhir is a publisher and CEO of The Voice Communications. His brand that he is known by is The Weekly Voice. It is an established brand in GTA. Everybody knows about it. It's perhaps the most read newspaper that we know of. The group recently also successfully launched its video news portal called the Voice News Network. Weekly Voice is a strong and traditional supporter of the Indo-Canada Chamber of Commerce. They've been with us for almost 10 years, if not more. Sudhir can probably correct me if I'm wrong on that. Next we have is Bobby Sahni. Bobby is a partner and co-founder of Ethnicity Matters. It is one of Canada's leading multicultural marketing agencies. I'm reading this because I am not quite familiar with this. It helps companies engage, empower, and acquire ethnic customers, both new immigrants and second-generation Canadian consumers. Bobby has been very active with the or not because he's become busy and prosperous, but there was a time when he used to frequently come as master of ceremonies for our annual galas, annual events. He hasn't done that, I think, in about 5-7 years, but I'm sure he will come back. We also have Hari Srinivas here. Hari is the president of Ethnic Channels Group, which is the world's largest ethnic broadcaster that operates over 100 channels around the world, serving multicultural populations in Canada, the US, the Middle East, and North Africa, and Australia, and has programming in 20 languages. Ethnic Channels also used to be one of our sponsors some time back. Hari, we also expect you to come back soon. Now, let me briefly introduce the subject of the webinar today. I'm not an expert. I have only researched this recently. Let me begin by saying that ethnic media in Canada is ubiquitous. It is everywhere, but it is inadequately understood. According to a recent estimate, there are 800 ethnic media outlets in Canada, publishing and broadcasting in more than 30 languages, including Mandarin, Punjabi, Farsi, Ukrainian. Through this webinar, we propose to understand ethnic media's relevance, explore its rise in Canada, and the trajectory it is expected to take in the near future. But before I begin the questions, I want to briefly talk about our business program. When we started this webinar series, the purpose was to come and help our members who are primarily small business owners. When COVID-19 and the lockdown happened, a lot of them had absolutely no way of getting information. So we as an organization that is pioneering their interests and advocating for their rights, we decided that we will offer them free services. If any small business has a problem pertaining to operational issues, pertaining to whether they are facing some sort of and they don't have information adequate enough to be able to operate, we ask them to write to us. We have a panel or a board that is qualified. They're all small business owners. They're all professionals. We will provide you with information for free of charge. So if you have a problem, if you want to have a solution quickly, come to us. We call it the ICCC Small Business Assist Program. The email address is simple, ICCC@iccconline.org. Come to us, write to us. We will be more than happy to help you. Now let's start with the questions. We are not going to follow. Oh yeah, before that, there should be a disclaimer. We always want to emphasize that the views that are expressed during the webinar are not necessarily those upon which you should be taking any investing decisions or actions. The information provided does not constitute legal, tax, or accounting advice. It is designed to provide general information relating to business and industry. The views expressed by the panel members are their own and do not necessarily reflect official policy or position of the ICCC. We can now move forward to the questions. Not right now. The Q&A with audience will come later. We can actually move the big slide and see if we can have the speaker's profile on the WebEx screen, or even this is better. Yeah, okay. So let me begin with very basic question, and this is just to start off the conversation. During the COVID pandemic, has your organization taken any special measures to reach out to your constituents? We're not expecting all of you to have an answer to that. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But we invite you to share some insights on what you are doing at this moment vis-a-vis the pandemic. Let me begin with Sudhirji. Your mic is on mute, Sudhirji.
Actually, you muted the voice. Hello, everybody. Bobby, hi, Vijay, Abhijit, and all the rest of the members here. I could not see our dear friend from the ethnic channels. Hi. Okay, go ahead.
You're on mute, Mayank.
We should have Sudhir on the camera rather than me, but that's happened. Yeah, okay. Go ahead, please. Sudhirji, go ahead.
Hi. Hello to everyone. What is the question, Mayank?
Sir, have your organization done anything vis-a-vis pandemic? Are you reaching out to your constituents? Are you reaching out in any way specifically that is not known to the general public, and you would like to share that?
See, there are various ways of reaching out to my audience or my readers, or there's other way of reaching out to my advertisers. So we are in regular touch with our advertisers in terms of the phone calls, or in some way through the emails or through other form of media. And specific to the audience, if we talk about, we are reaching out to them through Facebook, through website, and through radio and all other things. So we are reaching out to them. We are even publishing the paper. We're sending the e-paper through emails, through all those areas which are there available to us. We're using all of them.
Bobby, would you want to be the next one answering that?
Sure. So firstly, Mayank and everybody, thanks for having me here today. Our role as Ethnicity Matters is a little bit different. We're not a media company, but we are definitely a link between consumers, corporations, and media. Obviously, we feel that the role of ethnic media is very important in Canada, not only during this time in COVID, but really in totality. It's really the connection and the voice of the community. One of the things that we realized in really consuming a lot of the media, mainstream media in particular, was there was a lot of information out there in terms of the impact of COVID on Canadians. But our lens has always been, well, what does it mean to ethnic Canadians? And in our case, Indo-Canadians or South Asian Canadians. So one of the things that we did, we took it upon ourselves probably about 4 weeks back, we actually commissioned our own study, our own research study in which we surveyed 900 Canadians, so 300 South Asians, 300 Chinese, and 300 of the general population. And we asked very similar questions that we are consuming in a lot of mainstream media, in terms of what is the effects of COVID been on the job market, what has it been in terms of the view of corporate Canada, what's the view of politicians, what's the role of media, how are your consumption habits going to change? So all of this data we've been collecting over the last couple of weeks, and in the next few weeks, we're actually going to be starting to disseminate some of that information via webinars and guest speaking occasions. One of the things I can tell you about ethnic media in particular is we've actually seen consumption of ethnic media go up during times of COVID. And this has been across the board, whether it is across traditional television platforms, so Rogers, Bell, TELUS, etc., whether it is radio, whether it is online print publications, online magazines, and right across the board, we've seen that consumption go up. One of the other observations, though, that we've had has been that the federal and provincial government have been looking to support media as an industry, but ethnic media hasn't necessarily been clearly defined in terms of what kind of support the ethnic media is going to be receiving. So one of the things that we've done, two of the things actually we've done, my partner, Howard Lichtman, who started the company with myself, actually penned an open letter to many of you, to a lot of the ethnic media that we work with, and basically said, these are the facts and it's time for us to band together as a fraternity, as an industry, and actually be a collective voice to the government and really highlight the importance of ethnic media amid this time, amid COVID. So we are top of mind, or at least the ethnic media is top of mind in terms of any type of government support. So that.
Thank you, Bobby.
Yeah.
I'd like to have some inputs from Harry on the same subject.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Harry, can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me, Mike?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so to answer your question in terms of what we have done to reach out to our constituents today in this present crisis that we have today. So we have two constituents. One is our employees. Now, all of us are, or a majority of us are working out of home other than just essential staff. And being a B2B business, we have a relationship primarily with our content providers, which are our television networks, and also on the technological front, different, broadcast technology companies that we work with in order to bring in the content or bring in the signals. All of them, we reached out to them well in advance. We told them that we are functioning with a skeleton staff, but the services will not be disrupted because we had some essential staff working at our master control, which is basically the place where they receive the signals and feed the signals out. So to that extent, we reached out to our immediate constituents, which is our employees and our business partners. Once we supply the channels to our partners, which is companies like Rogers and Bell, who are also informed, they in turn take the responsibility of informing the end customer who actually purchases the channel. So we did take some concrete efforts in order to reach out to our business partners, our employees, to take immediate action once this crisis set in.
Move to the actual discussion on the subject, on the sector. I have written down some questions. Pramod and I were discussing this, so we will, share some questions. He will ask some, and I will ask some more, and then we will have Vijay round up the session in about an hour's time from now. This is something that is very basic. Does the demographic shift in Canada's population in favor of ethnic minorities mean a greater relevance of the ethnic media in Canada? Harry, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, sure, Mike. So the demographic shift is definitely in favor of ethnic media, but one needs to define what this media is and how the shift has happened. And I know that there are a few questions that are going to come about, on the technology front, but I'll just preempt it by saying that yes, it has had an impact in terms of the growth of ethnic media, but we have seen a lot of shift into digital. So what has happened is consumers who were previously consuming, traditional newspapers have moved to digital. People who are consuming and buying television from regular cable and satellite companies have now moved to digital. So certainly the demographics are in our favor, but I think as television companies, we need to reinvent our business model.
We lost you there briefly, Hari.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
So did you get the last part, or do you want me to repeat it?
If it is possible, please do repeat it.
Yeah, so what I was saying was, yes, the demographic shift that in terms of the number of multicultural communities in Canada, the growth has certainly helped, companies such as ourselves, which is media companies. But I think the biggest shift that has happened is the shift of consumers from traditional media into digital media. So in order for us to take full advantage of this increase in the demographics to favor us, we also have to take into account the changes that are happening with the consumer on a technological level.
I want to ask Sudhir ji. Sudhir, you started your voice 2 years back. It is providing substantive, news. Has that in any way affected your print publications?
No, actually, it has not affected the print publication because it is very, very important for us to understand people consume various information from the various sources. So it is not necessarily a person who is reading the paper will not consume the other part of or other media outlets to consume that. So it is important for us to be visible at various other platforms so that when a consumer comes there to consume that information, he is seeing us at various places. So that basically has created a greater brand value and greater trust. So no, it has not affected the print publication. No.
Okay. Bobby had actually sent me a very informative slide. Going to be playing slides today. So, Bobby, I want you to kind of just capture what you had sent me on a slide in an answer format.
Yeah, I think it's what I touched upon at the beginning in terms of the consumption habits during this time, during COVID, and we've actually seen an increase pretty much across the board. I think, your question as well in terms of with the influx of immigrants and international students coming into the market, does that mean by default growth of ethnic media? I think it's a good thing in terms of the influx of immigrants and international students coming in, but there's also a race towards relevancy as well. And I think one of the things that has been pointed out is a shift towards digital is obviously one of the aspects that we have to keep in mind. But as Canada becomes more multicultural, mainstream media is also watching these communities as well. They want the eyeballs, they want the listeners, they want the readers that a lot of our esteemed colleagues have here today. And if you look at other markets, if you look at Australia, if you look at the UK as an example, you see a lot of the national broadcasters actually changing the way they go to market, actually offering BBC as an example in Punjabi or in Arabic or in Urdu in different languages. So I think there's a role, obviously, for our local ethnic media players to play. They've done a great job amid COVID, I'd say, in terms of creating that local market relevancy and ensuring that messaging today is localized and contextualized to the community at hand.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question, which is not connected directly to COVID, but it is something that we need to understand, better understand the market. So it's a general question and it has several implications. So I'm going to just throw it in the air, and then I want your responses. So from your experiences, please explain what is the size of ethnic media in Canada. And when I say this, I mean in terms of circulation, viewership, online reach, revenues. Bobby, why don't you start?
This is it's a tough question to ask. Ethnic media is measurable, but you need to measure it. The challenge is we don't have a large entity like, let's say, a Numeris type of entity that is measuring the data for all of us, at least as marketers and advertisers, to utilize that. We as an organization, like I said, have taken our own steps to measure ethnic media on our own, and we're actually in the process of developing other tools for other marketers and advertisers to understand the size, the scope, and the value of ethnic media. One of the things that Sudhirji mentioned, though, as well, is even if we got down to the granular measurement of every medium out there, every medium has its role. But as a business community, we have to understand what is the role of print, what is the role of television, what is the role of radio, etc. And that's really the art and science of actually being able to use a lot of the established platforms like we're speaking to today, and how it can actually lead to business prosperity for a lot of the people that are listening as well.
Sudhirji, what do you think? You have seen your circulation rise all the time. What explains that?
See, it is specific. What Bobby just said was very, very correct information he has shared with you. Very difficult to measure the whole lot of those ethnic media, their outlets. See, there are various challenges we have. Fine, at the voice level, we may increase the circulation and able to consume that numbers as well. But majority of the cases where the smaller players are there, which cannot afford to have a larger circulation because of the limited resources, limited income. So it becomes very difficult and very big challenge for them. So if they increase the numbers, though they may consume it, but again, they cannot justify in terms of the revenue. So there are various things which I have seen over the period of like almost 30 years now. The numbers basically goes with the branding also. Like if we have a bigger brand, it is easier for us to consume those numbers. But the easier way in terms of getting the revenue also. But again, the challenging market, it keep on changing sometime overnight as the COVID has shown us. But most of the time, if there's a long weekend, I may not be able to consume all my publication numbers. So there are various challenges are there in the marketplace, which we keep on watching them very carefully, and at the same time, our behavior becomes the same. So yes, ethnic media has actually, I would say Indo-Canadian media rather, because I don't have much knowledge about Chinese and other communities. Indo-Canadian media, I would say numbers-wise, if revenue I talk about is approximately 200 million Canada-wide. Maybe little here and there, but I think Bobby can check that in a right perspective.
May I ask you a question pertaining to what you just said? Is it 200 million across all media streams?
No, Indo-Canadians only.
Oh, okay.
Indo-Canadian South Asians.
So if you have finished the answer, then I want to ask Harry a supplementary question.
No, I will just add one more information to this. And out of this number, what I'm talking about is a very, it's not exact numbers. It is like little variable here and there. I would say 15 to 20% difference maximum. But the major point is it is being given that money, that revenue is coming from the ethnic community rather than the bigger houses or bigger media places or big advertiser or ad agencies and all that. It is not coming through them. It is coming directly from the individual small shop, small pop and mom shop kind of people, some realtors, some other places. So the most of the money, 70 to 80% money is coming from that.
Harry, both the answers from Bobby as well as from Sudhir, they kind of beg the question: if you of what the reach is, then how are you going to pitch your channels to advertisers?
Yeah, so Mayank, I think it's important to define ethnic media and also define the revenue streams because there are two revenue streams, and I believe what Sudhirji was referring to was mainly the advertising stream, and Bobby as well from an agency perspective. But our business is different. Our business, 80% of our revenue comes from subscription. And if you really look at the global trend, and even look at companies, even like Netflix or Disney Plus, they carry no advertising. It's all subscription based. So when you look at the ethnic media and you define and you put a size to the ethnic media, basically drawing from the population. But it's very important to kind of really define who your end consumer is, because when you look at, I'm just using the example of the South Asian population. So let's say you have, approximately, say, 2 million South Asians. You would have first generation, you would have, second generation. They may not necessarily be consumers of ethnic media, although they count in the total population and in terms of your potential. So you could probably tomorrow have programming or content catered to them, and they would probably watch your channel. So going back to your question, industries that are, or media that are dependent on advertising, from an advertiser's perspective, they will have to show them either the reach or circulation if it's a newspaper, or information on statistics if you're a digital company. But if you are a subscription-based company, when we talk to advertisers, we go largely with our subscriber base because viewership is not measured. Numerous or any of the larger players do not measure, any of the ethnic television outlets because the number is small, and plus even their research is also very skewed because the sample size is not representative of the ethnic population. So when we talk to advertisers, we base it mostly on our subscriber numbers because 80% of our business is from subscription revenue.
Thank you very much. I think these were very comprehensive and insightful answers. Now, from reach, we have to go to impact. What do you think is the impact of ethnic media? And when I say impact, I define it with, in specific terms, are you influencing purchasing decisions? Are you able to influence public policy? Are you able to influence elections? I want Sudhirji to be the first one to answer this because he has something that is quite visible across GTA. Do you influence elections, Sudhirji, in GTA?
The context, the impact, when you're talking about the influence on the purchase or decision of the consumers or public policies or even on the elections, yes and no, I'll see both the things. Yes, in terms of the influence on the purchase by the people through our radio network or through the print network, yes, the people get influence in terms of what they want to buy. Most importantly, like if, what we have seen over the period of last 20, 30 years, so if we're talking about GTA, so last 20 years, elections basically are being held or being, the party wins only on their leadership, which is we have seen particularly, and there are certain community members which are basically running for those positions, those people are basically creating that influence in terms through the local media, yes, ethnic media, like yes, Indo-Canadians. They do come and talk about their information. They discuss about that. They even try to, influence people through the media outlets. Yes, then I would say yes, the election is also being influenced by the ethnic media. That is true only with those local members. Those are going contesting from that specific ridings, not through, I would say, the party. Party actually does not influence or does not play much role through the ethnic media, though the leader does. The leader of the party does. That is one. Purchase, I already discussed about that purchase. Policy wise, yes and no. So far, the ethnic media has not played that role or even created that kind of platform where we come in to discuss about the policy matter of the government, whether it is a city or province or the federal. We have not reached to that level yet. Which is unfortunate, but that is the correct information I'm trying to share with you.
If I may ask you a supplementary question to that, what is the reason for that?
Reason for
Why
that
are you
is
not able to influence public policy?
it is only because we are segmented society. Indo-Canadians, if we talk about, we are very segmented. We are not together on any of those policy matters or any of those things which comes out in the public. Though the media outlets, they do receive certain questions from the specific ministries or the minister to give the response to. But that is also being, since we are all fragmented, we look into only for our own selves, like myself. So it becomes very difficult for any ethnic media to play that influence. Not possible.
Bobby, I want to ask you, you are in the business of selling advertising and, marketing. So there's clearly the focus is on enabling purchase decisions. But impact also has to do with public policy. Impact also has to do with creating awareness. How successful do you think ethnic media market is in these spheres?
Well, again, our perspective is about getting product or client information in the hands of our clients. And we know that all ethnic media within Canada, irrespective of whether it's South Asian, Filipino, Chinese, Arabic, I mean, we're working across so many different language groups. Every medium has its role to play. Certain media has more mass reach, certain media has more niche reach. In terms of its ability to influence, we actually look at a lot of the media personalities, even within the South Asian community. A lot of our media personalities have become influencers as well. So beyond the influence that they may have, as a journalist or as an anchor on television or a radio jockey, they've got social media presence as well. They actually have an audience that is following them. So in terms of influence, absolutely, I think the ethnic media as well as the ethnic media personalities have that influence. In terms of impact, that comes down to what is your message and what is the habit you're trying to change. From a public policy perspective, probably not my place to comment on that. But as an advertising medium and as an advertising vehicle, definitely we rely very heavily on the ethnic media to help disseminate information to them.
No, but let me draw your attention. You just said when we began this discussion, you said your partner, who is also the co-founder of your firm, wrote to clients, in a very substantive way that is trying to influence action, which may impact either purchase decisions or investing decisions or where they want to put their dollar.
I think, sorry, the letter that was written to ethnic media was actually to try and band the media together. And actually, like I said, we've also launched a parallel study that is about the impact and effects of COVID. And through that study, we know the importance of ethnic media. One of the things that we have seen amidst COVID, at least from a marketing and advertising industry, is that there's been a lot of cuts. A lot of clients have started reducing budget or shifting budget, cutting budget. What we don't want is the ethnic media budgets to be reduced and cut or altogether. That's where we, as an industry working with our partners in ethnic media, what we're trying to do is actually have everybody band together and actually elevate the importance of ethnic media. So that is in a number of ways. That is through a study like the one that we did, which is about to be released, where we will be revealing a lot of the metrics and numbers that we do have around that. But the other would be, and I believe a lot of the members of the ethnic media have already started this, is actually starting to write to our politicians and to the leadership and say, and remind them of the importance of ethnic media, especially amongst this at this time, and the important role that it does play during a pandemic like this. For us, we're looking at it predominantly from an advertising perspective, but of course the information that the ethnic media is disseminating and distributing to the end users, the community, is very important. One of the examples I used is, the concept of social distancing as an example. Being South Asian, we don't distance from one another. We're very close to our friends and family. My parents, as an example, went from seeing them on a daily basis to, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. How do you explain that to the community? I think if you saw the incidence of ticketing for non-social distancing, it was highest in Brampton. Why? Right? There's reasons for that. And I think there's a role that the ethnic media, the South Asian media, can play to help to get this information and these messages out to the right people.
Harry, what is your take on this? I'm especially interested in knowing whether as a channel would you influence programming so that you can impact policy?
Oh, absolutely, Mayank. I mean, we are the single largest distributor of international television in Canada. We do over 100 plus global channels from around the world. And some of the, the names that we distribute are names like ZTV, Aaj Tak, which is the #1 news channel out of India, NDTV. So these are the channels that we directly distribute. And these are global brands. These are very well-reputed brands. So we have a lot of viewers tuning into those channels to understand, what's going on around the world. And I'll answer your question in two parts. One is on the purchase decision of the consumer. Absolutely, TV has probably the biggest impact in terms of, getting a message across as far as a product is concerned. And if you look at the IDA model, which is basically attention, information, decision, and action, the attention and information is primarily provided by television. And, and these are all 24/7 services. So they are not, they are available, 24 hours a day, all these big brand names. And so they provide the information to the customer on any product. And then the customer, and as it is with any customer today, he makes a decision, okay, do you want to buy this product? He compares it, goes to the store or whatever, and then takes the final action. He could also take that final action digitally. So we play a very, very big role in influencing purchase decisions. So, a lot of big advertisers, both, mainstream advertisers as well as retail advertisers use our channels to reach the consumers because we are subscription based. So if somebody's paying to watch a channel, that means they find value. So, so that's reflected in the number of advertisers who have used our channels as a media to reach the potential consumers to influence their purchase behavior. Second, as far as policy is concerned, I would agree, to a large extent with what my panelists were saying and what, especially Sudhirji was saying, is in order to influence, influence any kind of policy decision, I think we have to have some kind of a common objective as media. So, for example, if there's something that affects, the South Asian or Indian community as a whole, we need to come together and then use our power of the media to basically give momentum to this. So if it is an important policy decision, if there's something that's really affecting the community, I have seen the community come together. But I think that's what needs to be achieved. We do participate in anything that the government at both the provincial and the federal level does. I don't know if we influence any decisions there, but we do definitely pass on the message to our viewers to make the decision.
Thank you. Thank you very much. These are very comprehensive and very different sort of answers. Pramod, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I just wanted to add something to the discussion that is going on. I think one thing that is pretty pertinent, which we have to look at, if you talk about ethnic media in general, I mean, if you look at the print media, which is the most of the cases, like any language stream that you look at. So the first publication that they have or outreach they have is the print side. And then, of course, now with the evolution of digital media, we have digital platforms and the radio, of course. But I think given the majority of such publications or media outlets, I mean, they are smaller. So it's a question of survival. So I think revenue stream is one thing, as Hari just mentioned. I think his side of the system works based on subscription. But if you look at the online platforms, whether it is news channels or the digital channels that has come up or the print media, they don't have any subscription. The papers are all, to my understanding, free. It's not like the mainstream newspapers that we have that you pay for. So there is no fixed revenue stream, and the only revenue stream that you get is through your advertisers, which again, as my other panelists were saying, that most of 70 to 80% revenue is coming from the ethnic parties or the consumers from that particular ethnic background who subscribe to those publications or papers. So there is, by default, a heavy reliance on objective revenue gathering, and of course then that would influence. When we talk about policy, I mean, it has to be, as Hari mentioned, a specific joint kind of understanding that okay, there is something to influence, and then you need those resources and expertise to put things in perspective on a regular basis. So can these outlets or mediums have the capacity to engage such people, even for say creating content which could influence policy or an objective review of what is happening? You need to pay people. I mean, if you are relying only on freelance work, then of course you may not achieve what you intend to achieve. So that's a bigger question.
I think Sudhir ji should be the one answering that first.
See what Pramod ji has said about the technology and all those other details with the smaller size of the companies or have very limited resources in terms of implementing those policies, basically to how to get that technological shift within them. That is a big challenge. I do agree on that. But yes, internet has played a role in terms of cutting the newspaper sales. Specific, if we talk, is for the mainstream. See, we have a choice. Let me explain that. They need to read a newspaper, as what Pramod ji also said, is a free paper, free publication. So they have a choice. By choice, it is imposed on them. They don't go and buy it. So it is a very, very important subject where the audience, which plays a very important role in terms of picking up their print media or print paper by their own choice. So if they go to one Plaza A where they have 15-20 boxes all full of newspapers with the different languages or different brands or whatever you call them, so they have the choice to pick up which copy, which paper. So when a consumer picks up by choice, so then even if there is no shift in the technology within those houses or within that places, they still have the reach out to the consumer, because consumer is still liking it, consumer is still picking up those papers, consumer is still reading that because it is their choice who they picked up. I think I answered the question.
Thank you, Harry, by your input on this. This is connected to a lot of things that we've been discussing, especially technology.
Yeah. So thanks, Mike. I think this is something that everyone knows, but there's been a big shift to especially in the media industry, to the digital side, and this has had an impact on both traditional media, which is traditional television, which is cable and satellite. So you look at the South Asian side or the Indian side. You have digital products like Hotstar and Z5. I mean, these are the Netflixes or the Amazons or the Disneys of India. So and Hotstar is essentially Disney now because Disney bought over Star News Corp. So certainly there is a big shift even on the subscription side from people moving from watching linear television, which is 24/7 television, to video on demand, which is basically Hotstar, Z5, similar to Netflix, where you watch a program when you want to watch it and how long you want to watch it. So that shift has already happened on the television front. On the newspaper front, and as Sudhirji rightly pointed out, that shift has already happened. And today, especially looking at newspapers, because they're 100% dependent on advertising. Unless you are charging for a subscription, you're 100% dependent on advertising. And now when you're 100% dependent on advertising, you go into a pool which is much bigger, because now you're competing with the Facebooks and the Googles of the world. Because if I'm an advertiser today and I say, okay, I want to reach an X audience, I have that option today by going to the bigger guys. So it is definitely challenging for media moving forward. And I think the more we embrace technology, and we have done that in our company already, because in addition to distributing channels, we are also one of the largest broadcast technology providers. We actually provide technology services to more than 4,000 broadcasters from around the world. So we did that as a choice, because we said we saw the industry shifting, and we said, look, we can't be stuck in a certain place. We have to evolve. So I think the faster you embrace technology, the faster you adopt technology, the faster you recognize what's happening out there in the real world. And if you look at the COVID crisis, I mean, what has happened with the COVID crisis? What would have taken digitization 2 or 3 years to happened in less than 2 months. And I'll just give you an example of Walmart, right? So Walmart, 50% of their revenue comes from groceries, and they were competing against Amazon, for a long time, and Amazon was beating them on online delivery. And although Walmart was taking its own time, it was doing a lot of efforts into digitization, they had no choice with this COVID crisis. So in 2 months, they actually accelerated their digital program. So digitization or digital is impacting every industry in the world. And with COVID, it has only accelerated. So embrace the technology. That's the only way, because, and we also, I'll also like to say that every business has unique revenue streams. And I think as business people, one also has to look at, okay, what are the business streams today? Are they going to be the business streams tomorrow? And make changes accordingly. And that's how the business survives.
Bobby, everybody is talking about Hotstar, and you represent Hotstar in Canada, I believe. Your insights will be invaluable on this.
I'm surprised on an ethnic media panel, nobody has used the cliche yet, so I'll use it. Content is king. I mean, if you have good content, there's people that are willing to pay for it. So, as Hari had also mentioned, the shift to digital is here. We have to embrace it, but it comes down to good content. If you are the producer of good content, irrespective of if it is on television, radio, print, or on Facebook, as an example, people will seek your content. And I think the shift to a lot of the streaming services, like a Hotstar, like an Amazon Prime, like a Netflix, again, it validates that there is a customer base out there that is willing to pay for good content that can be curated and easily to discover. So I mean, that's been our experience with working with a company like Hotstar.
Thank you. Earlier in the day, Pramod and I were discussing, and I want Pramod to ask that question because he asked that to me, and I wasn't quite sure what the answer was. Pramod, do you recall? You were saying about the proportion of immigration population and the kind of revenue or ad spend that companies have. Is there any kind of correlation between them? Pramod, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So again, I mean, thanks, Mank. As Mank mentioned, we were just exploring to see, and it would be an interesting figure or statistics to get if we can from any of you. Whatever the total ad spend is from the government or from the corporate world, just in general, not anything specific, compared to the overall Canadian market. And if you look at the visible minority or ethnic side of the population and all the media put together. So, I mean, by any yardstick, just on a general note itself, is it proportionate in terms of numbers or dollar value to the total that gets spent and what gets spent by these corporate houses or for that matter government, whether it is federal or provincial, to support the ethnic channels? And just give you an example, like say now with COVID-19 situation, I'm sure the government is going out and putting up a lot of money in terms of ad spending, putting in place the various programs and policies that are coming up, have been announced. I don't know. I mean, I don't get involved with a lot of ethnic media, but is there any content that has been devised and placed or advertised on the ethnic medium per se, in terms of disseminating that information, whether it is coming from the government to the public at large, to be able to utilize, take benefit of this? So anybody, I mean, and Bobby can start. I mean, I think he would have more numbers. Anything to comment on this?
No specific number on the government per se just yet, but I can tell you from a corporate Canada perspective, the numbers are not in line where they should be. Our message to clients at least has always been, today 20% of the population is 2036. It's going to 33% of the population is foreign born. Therefore, you should be spending an equivalent budget to target those communities. Where it's not an exact science is, again, if I use today's numbers, if I say 20% of the population is foreign born, therefore 20% of your budget should be going to target immigrant communities. There is that crossover where there are consumers that are, like it or not, they are consuming mainstream media as well. They are consuming mass digital media as well, along with their ethnic media. I think the role of the ethnic media fraternity is to actually quantify what is their share of those eyeballs that are unique, that are not being shared with mainstream media, and that's really the turf that can be defended, but also can be quantified and used for growth for any company looking to capture that unique share. I mean, it's a job that we have literally on a daily basis, where we're presenting plans to our clients, and obviously relying a lot on the ethnic media in terms of our conduit to those communities. But the question that we ask is, well, how many of these consumers are also consuming ethnic media, mainstream media? And if they're consuming mainstream media, do we really need to be spending on the ethnic media? There's a lot of other nuances there as well. We talk about the relevancy of in language versus in culture, and all the cultural relevancy nuances as well of the creative and messaging, but that's essentially where we are. So to answer your question, it's a disproportionate share, that's going to mainstream versus ethnic. Absolutely an argument to spend more on the ethnic media, but we all have a role to play in making that case.
Thank you, Bobby, for that answer. And just another twist to this. I mean, yes, I mean, if you look at corporates for that matter, and if they are specifically targeting a particular ethnic group or multiple ethnic groups for their product sales or penetration, we have seen all over. I mean, whether it is telecom companies or auto companies or anybody for that matter. So they devise specific programming and even ads specific to target the ethnic media. But I would wonder whether if the government spend that comes gets spent on outreach, is that also perhaps where the major gap is? Because that does not get translated to the ethnic media proportionately to the extent it should be. It only gets directed to the mainstream media. Am I fair to make that comment?
Yeah, Pramod, actually, I'll just jump in here.
Yeah, sure.
This is Harry, so I'll jump in here, and and I want to answer your government spend question first, and then I just wanted to comment on what Bobby mentioned. Just I wanted to add a couple of my points as well. So specifically with the government, it's absolutely disproportionate. We don't get any advertising. We get some once in a while, but nowhere compared to what mainstream media gets. Despite us being the single largest distributor of international multicultural television in Canada, I mean, there's nobody even close to the number of multicultural television channels we distribute. And I'll give you an example specific to the COVID crisis. So the federal government came out with this plan of spending $30 million to reach the ethnic audience in Canada via ethnic media. And the reason they wanted this ad to go across every single medium is because with COVID, it's not about, it's not a product that you're looking at marketing to a certain segment. This affects everybody, so the message has to get to everybody. I think it was about a couple of months ago that they announced this. They hired an agency called Cossette out of Montreal to deal with dispersing this ad. And it's been 2 months, and to date, those ads haven't started. And the COVID crisis has been raging for 2 months. And this is especially important to the ethnic community because a lot of the older people, a lot of the older population, which is more vulnerable, they don't necessarily speak English or French. And people think if somebody speaks English, he understands it the same way as somebody who's a native speaker. So, for example, if you take a 70 or 75-year-old grandfather who probably came to Canada in the last 5 years on a family class, he needs to be spoken to in his language to get the message. So even in a crisis like COVID, okay, there has been no advertising specifically targeted to the ethnic population. And this is after the budget was approved of $30 million. So it's sort of the ethnic media, and this is we play a very important role. I mean, not just the ethnic media, but ICCC and all the other major Indo-Canadian organizations. I mean, we are a force to reckon with. But for some reason, that does not translate into reaching out to the ethnic population through messaging. And this is, now I'm going back to what Bobby was saying, and and he's right that there's always going to be a crossover. But when you look at a product, you reach your consumer through multiple ways. You don't use only one media. So, for example, if you are, let's say, buying a car, you want to see that Ford or Toyota, whatever car ad, not just when you read the Toronto Star, but you also want to watch it on ZTV because it's a reminder medium. Because you don't necessarily go and buy a product the first time you see an ad, you need to be reminded. But going back to what Bobby was saying, in terms of even if you take the proportion of the population and you take 20% of foreign born, you take into account the first generation, there's a sizable population. But if you look at ad spend, it's nowhere close. And when you look at the government and you look at the COVID crisis, $30 million was allocated for ethnic media, and we have not seen a single dollar from that until today. It's been 2 months now.
Thank you very much. Now, Pramod, we are running out of time, so I'm going to first do something that we need to do, which is to request Vijay to see if we can take some audience questions. Vijay, there are a number of those on Facebook.
Yes. So there's a couple of questions here. So let me take a couple of them. One question I think is something that came to my mind as well is Indian newspapers. The first thing that you realize about Indian newspapers, you expect it to be free at the Indian store. So do any of you think of a time where people will actually pay for Indian newspapers? So Sudhir Anandji, do you want to take that one?
Yes, Vijay, thank you. The question here is like, I would be very, this is very interesting actually, this question is. When I started back here in Toronto in 1999, 2000, I was the one who made this my paper free. So before that, the India Journal and India Abroad and a couple of other Punjabi papers were being sold on a price of $1 to $1.50, approximately around that time. I'm talking about 1999 and 2000. So when I made this publication free, the Voice, the weekly Voice was free to the people who can go and pick up. These people, they came after me and asking me, why did you do that? I said, well, two reasons why. Number one, Indian people, they would not like to pay for the paper. If we are looking into that, then we can increase the circulation of the paper. If we need to have a higher circulation to reach out to the people, then we have to make it free. So that was the reason those people, those are being paid papers, stores like for 2,500 copies, 1,000 copies. Whereas when we started distributing it, we could consume 20,000 copies comparatively. Right? So that was a major reason for us to reach out to the consumer, was the only way if we make this paper free. And I don't think Indian community or Indo-Canadian community will come back to buying those papers. I don't think so.
Okay. So Sudhir Anand, if there's somebody to be blamed, that is you then, who's made it all free then. Okay, so Bobby, Sahni, Bobby, would you have any thoughts on this? Do you think could there be a time where this could actually turn free? I mean, Sudhir Anand definitely thinks change that he brought in is not going to come back. What are your thoughts?
Tough to say. I mean, some people know this, but many people don't. When I left Rogers many years ago, I actually spent about a year at the Toronto Star as well, and the Toronto Star obviously has gone through various changes as well, going from obviously a paid, printed newspaper to having all its content available free online, to then changing their model once again with a paywall. For me, it goes back to the willingness to pay for content, and if it's good content, people will have a willingness to pay for it. I think the one watch out is, is the content that you're producing, is it available anywhere else? Is there comparable content that you just can't get anywhere else? When I look at services like Netflix, like Hotstar, like Amazon Prime, or even into streaming audio, Spotify as an example, a lot of music is available online for free. You don't have to pay for it, but I think technology has played a role in being able to curate this content for people as well. And therefore there's a willingness to pay for it. So I wish like I said, I'm not a member of the media. I wish I had the answer for you, but I don't have the answer, and I don't feel equipped to answer that for you. Probably the members of the media are probably better at answering that for you.
Thanks a lot, Bobby. So we have a couple more questions. This question.
I will add something more into this. Very quickly, yes, is the content is the leader today. If we have the right content, people will be willing to pay as well. But the question is not that alone. Question is like, fine, people say the specific areas within the Indo-Canadian community came from. Some from Gujarat, some from Bombay, some from Delhi, some from Punjab, some from other places. So it is very difficult, very, very difficult to even cater to them in the content-wise to their needs of their place from where they origin. So it is very difficult. But at the same time, yes, there we could create a common space for most of them to give them what exactly their needs are and what basically their wants are. Because if we talk about the print, if we talk about the newspapers, it is very, very important for them to have that, you know, content which is most likely will go and satisfy the need for most of them. So it is very, very important.
Okay, thanks, Sudhirji. So I have a question for Hari Srinivas. Hari, the question to you is, you said you're bringing 100 channels into Canada specifically. You obviously, already know about, free channels available, and people can buy a set-top box, pay $10 a month, and you get all these channels free, right? So what do you think about, is that an impact? How do you go after that, where people are actually getting free content or pirated content? Is that any of a, does that impact your business? And what is the way out?
So piracy definitely has a big impact on our business, and unfortunately, we have taken a lot of efforts, anti-piracy measures, along with some of our other programming partners. It is a big problem. It is a big problem, and most of these pirates, the thing is, they're not even located in the country, because you cannot really put an end to it, because his server could be located outside the country. So even if you shut his shop down in Brampton, he will start another company with a different name, with a server being somewhere else. So it is definitely a big problem. It's not a small problem. It's definitely a big problem. And most of the channels, though, that are pirated are the channels from overseas. So I'll give you an example. So ZTV has a feed that is dedicated to Canada, and that's not available on satellite. It comes through fiber, direct point-to-point fiber. So pirating that signal is very difficult. So usually most of the channels that you see on the pirated boxes are the signals that are picked up off satellite in India. So you'll probably see the ZTV India feed, which has a little bit of a different programming. But, the customer gets what he wants, and the customer is paying a fraction of what he would pay if he were to take the channels from a cable and satellite provider. So yes, it has a big impact on our business. But having said that, the prosecution, getting things, to wipe out piracy, it's a big challenge. We're working towards it, but it continues to be there. It's been there for a long time, and unless there are some changes in our rules, regulations, where it becomes a criminal offense and you can actually prosecute them, or even at the ISP level, because one of the things that we had proposed was any of these internet service providers, that they block certain websites. Now that becomes interference with with freedom of speech and things like that. So there are some challenges we're facing, but it does impact our business.
Okay. Thanks, Hari. And I have another question here. This question is kind of directed to Pramod and Mayank, and maybe you guys can take it. So the question is, why cannot, I think Hari said that the government has 30 million to spend on COVID, and only none of that came to the ethnic media. So shouldn't the Indo-Canadian Chamber of Commerce be batting for the ethnic media? And so that question's to you, Pramodji, as the president of the Indo-Canadian Chamber of Question. You're getting a hard question back to you. Shouldn't you be batting for them?
For sure, Vijay. I mean, and I think I started on the discussion myself. I mean, and this is very relevant. I think it's not a question of just the Indo-Canadian ethnic media. We're talking about the ethnic media in general from a broader perspective. And I think looking at the population, the number and the size and the growing numbers of visible minorities and other populations that are coming in. I think if the spend is not proportionate, then that message is not reaching to the desired intended audience. And I think whether it is the corporate or the government, I mean, that fairness has to be there. Especially, I mean, the corporates can decide on their own what media, how much, and what kind of spend they want to do. But I think when government tries to initiate any outreach initiative, they want to make it fair that it goes to each and every individual. And I think some of these individuals, as I think Bobby mentioned and even Harry mentioned, like some of them are only subscribing to or accessible to certain format. Like we talked about seniors, so they don't necessarily go onto the digital platform. So if somebody is comfortable reading only in Punjabi or in Urdu, from that mind, so then I think that message has to be there. So I think government has to do definitely its bit in terms of allocating the funds to these ethnic media and to support them. And I think as a chamber, coming back to your question, yes, we should be in support. And I think whatever we can do at our end in terms of taking this feedback to appropriate authorities in the government, we would certainly.
Thanks, Pramodji. I have one more question. I think Mayankji, how are we doing for time? Is this
We've actually gone beyond time, so maybe one or maybe two, I don't know, depending on how many people you want to answer.
okay? So let's get two more questions. So one quickly. Okay, so let's start with Sudhir Anand ji here. Sudhir ji, most newspaper and almost every segment of our ethnic media, I think, is targeting the first generation immigrant. How can we, and how is there any strategy? Because I think the bigger market is going to be the second generation and third generation ethnic media people, the immigrants. So what is your strategy around that? I think you're on mute, Sudhir ji. Yeah, go ahead. You're unmuted now.
I would say that my strategy or the voice strategy, I will give answer on the phase 2. Phase 1, which is very, very important, we see almost 30 to 40,000 new immigrant from India alone comes every year. That is one. Second is the number of students who comes. Fortunately, unfortunately, the student population being in the system, though they do not use any kind of print media, doesn't matter whether it's mainstream or ethnic or community papers like Mississauga News or Brampton Guardian. They don't use any of those. The only media they use is definitely the digital media, the student population I'm talking about. The other ones which comes and move here on residency permit or like PR, whatever you call, they have had that kind of an experience where they've been reading the papers every day in the morning at their native place. So they have that habit of reading those papers. So it is very important for them to even get one, and it will be more so if it is free. So yes, we do not have to create a strategy as an ethnic media to shift. Though the first generation and the new generation which is coming, I will not say second, I'll say new generation, which is coming to Canada, is also linked and hooked up with those papers. And now I'll talk about the strategy. Yes, what Bobby also said, what Harry also said, I'm repeating the same thing. Yes, digital media is going to rule in the next 10 to 15 years, definitely. But as far as ethnic media is concerned, community is concerned, they still will be using the print media through whether it is online or whether through the actual print publication. Our strategy will be to give a mix of both those two things to the larger population. Whoever wants to have a print publication in their hand, they would like to read that way, will provide that as well. And at the same time, will be moving ahead and going through the digital media as well.
Okay. So thanks, Sudhirji. So Bobby, a question to you. I mean, again, the newspaper is one part of it. My daughter is 18 years old. She doesn't read any newspaper, right? I kind of tell her, you got to read a newspaper. She doesn't read any newspaper. However, there is the mainstream media still segments her. They get her through other things. Now, the ethnic media, I have not seen the ethnic media trying to target second generation, immigrants or second generation Indo-Canadians. Is that a segment? Isn't that a large segment that you're not going after? What are your thoughts?
So a couple of things. I think one of the cardinal rules of business is you can't be all things to all people. So as a business owner, whether you're Sudhirji or if you're Hari or anyone else in media, I think you have to really define, well, who's the audience that you're going after. So while we do have an influx of international students and immigrants coming into this country that is developing a sizable population, we're also an aging population as well. So do we want to cater to the newcomers? Do we want to cater to the international students? Do we want to cater to the aging population? Do we want to cater to second generation like myself? These are all different segments that need to be addressed. But I will tell you, there's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach to reach all of these people, because the type of content that I'm going to consume may be different than what my mother or father might consume, or it might be different than what my cousin who may be newly coming from India might consume as well. So the role of the media is to really define who is the audience that you're going after, who you're trying to cater to. To answer your question, is there a sizable target with the second generation? Absolutely. I know there has been and there continues to be media that does cater to this demographic, whether it is through traditional magazine formats or podcasts or events. There are a number of media properties out there that do cater to these audiences. And if you want a little bit of a window into the future, if you look at other markets as well, if you look at, say, the UK as an example, or even if I look at a lot at the US market and how US media companies are actually targeting the Hispanic population. It's not just about being in language, it's about being cultural as well, and what kind of cultural relevancy you have. So if you look at, multi-generational audiences within a given ethnic community, whether it's a first generation, second generation, third generation, language is only one piece of the puzzle, right? Is your content, is it culturally relevant to what I'm looking for as a South Asian Canadian in this country? So, is there a need? Absolutely. It really comes down to what your business model is and who you're trying to cater to.
Thank you. And if you're listening, that's probably the answer there is they're busy going after the existing segments. So there is probably some gaps in the market that those of you are watching and entrepreneurial, there is probably segments that you can go after as well. A last question to Hari here before we want to end. You're bringing a lot of content from outside into Canada. Any plans on creating Canadian ethnic content, Canadian ethnic content that possibly could go out as well? Things like people like Lily Singh and have now become, they could probably fall under the ethnic Indo-Canadian kind of thing, and she's global now, so there could be ethnic content creators that can become global. So do you think that there could be a market of Indo-Canadian content that could go outside of Canada and become global as well?
Yeah, so we actually produce a lot of content. As per CRTC guidelines, all the channels that you see today, they have to have at least 15% of local Canadian content, which we actually produce. We actually have 2 full studios in our facility. And in addition to that, we actually have a subsidiary company called ECG Productions. And ECG Productions has actually produced over 2,000 hours of content already, which a majority of which has been, done with the support of Canada Media Fund. And we have actually done, shows, spanning multiple ethnicities. Like we did, a show called Sounds of Canada, which is basically, music from different cultures, Indian being one of them. We also did, we've done 3 seasons of that. We did 2 seasons of Taste the Diversity, which is basically about different kinds of cuisines from different parts of the world that are present in Canada. Like, for example, an Indian cook, who immigrated to Canada, started a restaurant. This was about Indian cooking. same with the Portuguese and Arabic. So we've actually done, I mean, we've been doing local content, for the last, 10, 15 years. We have, as I said, we have a subsidiary company called ECG Productions, which has done over 2,000 hours of programming. And yes, we are right now actually looking to license some of that content to networks outside of Canada. So they were carried on our channels, but now we are looking to license them. So we are already in that business. We also have, weekly shows. There's a show called Spotlight. I believe, some of you might have been featured on it. I know that representatives from the ICCC were there, have been featured on that show that we produced called Spotlight. But yes, I mean, we are in the content production business, and as Bobby mentioned, content is king. So we are making a lot of efforts in that direction, and we'll continue to do more and more of it.
Okay, thank you, Hari. And I think that brings us to the end of this very entertaining, very session. I'd like to thank Mr. Sudhir Anand, Mr. Bobby Sahni, Mr. Hari Srinivas, and also Mayank Bhatt and Pramod Goyalji for a fantastic, and great discussions. I think we're just going to just quickly share. I think we've got to thank our technology partner Tangentia, and one quick thing there is. Once we've done that, we've got to also thank you to everybody for watching. Those of you who joined us on this Tuesday evening, we thank you very much. We also have a Thursday event every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. So please tune in. That's Thursday Talks, and watch. Go to ICCConline.com. We have the rest of the events that are coming up are already listed there. So again, for enquiries about today's webinar, membership, or a small business assist program, write to us at ICCConline.org. And again, thank you very much, everybody. I will send it back to Pramodji for any last words there. Over to you, Pramodji.
Thank you, Vijay. And on behalf of the Chamber and our board, I would personally like to thank all our panelists for taking the time and to be with us and enlighten us with regard to what is happening on the ethnic media side and what the challenges are. And I'm sure with today's discussion, we had a better understanding of the functionality and the challenges being faced. And I can reassure, as I said earlier, whatever the Chamber can do in terms of putting that word out and following up with the concerned government authorities, we would take it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, guys.
Thank you very much.